Thank you very much for this Cuban cigar. That's fantastic.
So first of all, I want to thank you for being here. You have been on the cover 4 times already, and this will be your 5th, which obviously is a record. But to us, you are an iconic representative of a person who loves cigars. And our 1.7 million readers are going to read it word for word, cover to cover. I wanted to start with something a little basic. How does a person go from being an unknown kid growing up in Austria to a world champion bodybuilder, to a superstar movie actor, to the governor of the largest state in the United States, and today have become such a famous, successful person? How does that happen?
Well, there are a lot of elements that play into that. There's the element of being a very driven person and always having a clear vision of where I wanted to go. And there's the element of upbringing, which is that after the Second World War, my upbringing was very, very strict, and I had a very tough father that was sometimes physical and smacked us around. And so I wanted to escape from that home. So that had something to do with that, creating the fire in the belly. And then it had something to do with America, because none of it I would have been able to enjoy, and none of the successes that would have happened if I wouldn't have come to America. Imagine if I would have gone to South Africa or to Australia or to China or to Russia or wherever it is, it wouldn't have happened. This is the number one place in the world with the greatest opportunities, and I was very fortunate to make that dream of coming to America become a reality. From the beginning, when I saw Hercules movies as a kid, I said to myself, I want to look like that. I want to be like that. And then by coincidence, I picked up a cover of a magazine, a bodybuilding magazine, that had Reg Park, that very same guy that was in the Hercules movies, on the cover, and it said, here's how Mr. Universe became Hercules. I said, oh my God, this is the blueprint how to get there. So I bought the magazine right away, and I followed those principles, that he was training 5 hours a day, that he became Mr. Great Britain, he became Mr. Universe, and he became Mr. Universe a second time, 7 years later, and then 7 years later, the third Mr. Universe title, and all this. The same as if, here's his training. He comes from Leeds in England, just like a factory town where I'm from, and he did it. So I can do it too, it's possible. So it created the vision and the belief and the faith in my vision. And that's why I talk about this in my book a lot, is about creating your vision, creating your dream, creating your kind of like goal where you want to go. And then it would inspire you and motivate you then to go and to put the work into it. And so I had the training program there from Reg Park and all those things, and I followed this training program. I did the 5 hours a day, and I made it. And I became with the age of 20, I became the youngest Mr. Universe ever. And that's, I learned, if you have a vision and if you don't listen to the naysayers, and if you work your ass off, then you can make it. And so that this is the kind of 3 of the rules that I mentioned in the book, and that really helped me to get where I am. And then I copied those rules as I learned more and more. I copied those rules to the next career, to show business, and then to the next one.
Did you desire to be in movies, or how did it come about that you found yourself in movies?
Well, like I said, I saw those Hercules movies, and I said to myself, this guy won Mr. Universe, and then he was discovered because of his muscles to be in those movies. And so I said to myself, I maybe can do the same thing. I will become a world champion in bodybuilding, and then I can be in the movies. So I said to myself, I'll go to Los Angeles. That's where I need to go. Then I can go and become the greatest bodybuilder. And then, just like Reg Park and Steve Reeves, I can get into movies. The only problem was that when I came to America, and when I became the greatest bodybuilder 4 times, in the 70s, all of a sudden, muscle men were not in. So the agents, when I asked an agent to represent me, says, Arnold, are you crazy? This is the people of your size. You weigh 250 pounds. I says, it's too big. No one wants you in a movie. The Hercules movies are out. Then I went to studio producers and studio executives, and they said, forget about it. It's not going to happen.
Forget about it?
Forget about it.
Forget
You're never
about
going to
it.
be a leading man. It's not going to happen. You know, this is Dustin Hoffman is in now, Al Pacino, Woody Allen. It's all guys. They're the little guys, small guys. He says big guys are not needed today anymore. The 60s are over. The Hercules movies era is over. It's not going to happen. He says, why don't you just go and get and build a health food store or something like that, or a gymnasium? Then we can help you with that, but not with being an actor.
So what was the great break that you went from being an actor in movies to a superstar in movies?
Well, first of all, what was important to me was that I believed 100%, just like in bodybuilding, that I could see it, me being another Clint Eastwood. I could see it, me being another Charles Bronson. These were the hot guys, action guys then. I said, so if I can see it, I can achieve it. And so when they said no, and when they said it's impossible, it actually gave me fuel to show them that I can do it. So to me, discouragement didn't mean that I ran the other way. Discouragement to me was fuel to get the job done.
But
unlike other people that need compliments and you're great, you can make it. I don't need that. I need to someone say, you can't do that, it's impossible.
Right. But what was the role that catapulted you to stardom?
There was not really one role. It was like Conan the Barbarian launched me into an international kind of an atmosphere where the studio was willing to send me all over the world to promote the movie. And then I did another Conan movie, and I did another kind of sword and sorcery movie. But then what really broke the next level of ice was Terminator. Terminator was a movie that showed me without showing really the body. So this was kind of the first movie where I didn't have to kind of strip down and show continuously my body like in the Conan movies. So when people saw that and the movie becomes so successful, one of the top 10 movies of the year, Terminator 1, and then they make a Terminator 2, and then that went through the roof and became the most successful movie of the year and all this stuff. People then started offering me regular parts as an action hero. So then I started getting offered movies like Commando, Predator, Running Man, Raw Deal, the list went on and on, Total Recall, and so on and so forth. And all of those movies became more and more successful. And then all of a sudden, I was like among those few action heroes that made a lot of money in the box office and was a reliable kind of source of income for the studios. And so I got hired over and over to do more and more action movies. The only thing was that my dreams changed a lot of times. So from going from action hero, then all of a sudden it was to become a comedic kind of a hero and to do comedies and to do action and comedy and combine the two. So I tried to figure out how to do that. So again, the studio said, are you crazy? We are making all this money with you with action movies. Why would we go and offer you a comedy? It's crazy. And they said, well, I think I can do it. And they said, no, forget it. Luckily, I found this guy, Ivan Reitman, who just finished directing and came out with a successful movie, Ghostbusters. And he was the director of that movie. And he said to me, I believe in you. I'm going to develop for you a project that will be very funny and where we can use the action and also the comedy. And we got Danny DeVito and we did Twins.
Which was such a great movie.
I know. So that became actually more successful than all of my action movies together. I mean, it was like every one of my action movies made shy of 100 million. And the twins made 128 million. The first movie that ever made over 100 million for me in the box office. So now everyone started offering me comedy. Then they did, the Kindergarten Cop. Then they did True Lies. They did Junior and all those movies.
As an aside, Danny was on the cover of Cigar a long time ago, but a great guy.
Great guy.
So we blink. You now have your second career. Now all of a sudden you're in politics. What would make you even think about when you have so much rolling for you that you want to go into public service, and lo and behold, you're the governor of the largest state in the United States?
Well, it's interesting how those things kind of are created in your mind as you go along, right? I was really doing well in acting, and I was going up to the top. And I was making the #1 movies of the year in acting and all this stuff. But throughout this whole time, I met Maria in the 70s. And she brought me home to her family, which was the Shriver family, the Kennedy family, and all of that. And there I heard all the time dialogue about, public service and about Special Olympics, about helping kids, helping people with the health care, helping people that are not having enough money to get legal aid, to the poor, and all issues. And I said to myself, I never thought about any of that. This is crazy. I mean, this is like unbelievable that they have people that dedicate themselves to just how to help other people. That's really a great business to be in. And so I got more and more fascinated with that idea. And not that I wanted to get in that direction, but I found it fascinating, and I started reading up on it and more do research. And then then I got into the Special Olympics. I became the international coach in weight training for the Special Olympians. And then President Bush appointed me to be the chairman of the President's Council on Fitness. Then through that, I then learned there is such a thing as after-school programs, and I started looking into that and realized that we need more after-school programs, so I started creating an organization. And so actually what I realized was this is addictive to help other people, which is not something that was in my vision at all. It's addictive it really feels great when you go home at night and you feel like you've helped so many people, rather than just dealing with yourself and helping yourself. So I thought it was great. So I think one thing led to the next. So I was involved in the Special Olympics and President's Council and Fitness, after-school programs. So when then the recall election came up in California, I said to myself, wouldn't it be cool to just actually dedicate your whole life to just serving a state? And so I jumped into the race for running for governor.
Did you jump in on your own, or did somebody say to you, why don't you consider running?
From the 70s on already, people said to me, you should run for governor. And I don't know why, because I had no interest in politics at that point at all, other than being a disciple of Nixon. And, having listened to Nixon during the 1968 campaign, when he campaigned against Humphrey. And I just came to this country, and I had this friend of mine, he could sit there in front of the TV and translate for me the discussions that were going on between Nixon and also Humphrey. And so I became kind of a Republican because of Nixon. I liked his philosophy and everything like this. So people always said, well, I think it would be cool if you actually run for governor. And I remember when I finally met President Nixon in the 80s, and because I was a big admirer of his, and I went to his library a lot of times, to the Nixon library. And one time he invited me to come down, and then out of nowhere, he tells me that I should give a speech. But this was like from 1 minute to the next. I was standing there with him, he's introducing me, he says, Arnold, why don't you say a few words? I was like, oh, Jesus. But somehow, I just recalled I should just explain how I became a Nixon fan. And I talked about his campaign, his presidential campaign, and blah, 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 and all this stuff, and talked about that for around 10 minutes. And he then came up to me afterwards and he said to me, he took me in his office and he says, you should run for governor. You have the thing that it takes. He says, you have the improvisation art down. He says, you're very good at communicating with the people, connecting with the people. He says, you have it all. You should become governor of the state of California. So there was another one of those things where I didn't even think about it. So people mention it a lot of times. But at one point when the recall happened, I said, this is perfect because I'm not a right wing. I'm not a left wing. I'm in the middle. So I said to myself, that doesn't play well in California with the primaries because you have to be really to the right as a Republican. So I said to myself, here's perfect. There's a recall election. There will be no primaries. There will be no problem. I can go directly to the people and I can go and win. All I have to do is tell them my plan and be convincing. And that's exactly what I did. There was Gray Davis who ran against me. He had out there Bill Clinton campaigning for him, Al Gore campaigning for him, John Kerry campaigning for me. All of those guys came out to campaign for him, and I didn't have anybody. I just campaigned myself because I said, when Bush administration called, should we help you? I said, no. I said, I want actually to be the David, not the Goliath here. I said, let him be the Goliath. I'm the David. I'm the underdog. It's just between me and the voters. And so this is exactly what I did. I just changed the whole thing so that I always said to people when the press asked me, do you have Bush come out? Do you have some of the Republicans? I said, no. I said, it's between me and the voters. I'm going to talk to the voters and I'm going to tell them, you don't want to have blackouts all the time. You don't want to have a state that is in deficit all the time. You don't want to have the traffic jams all the time. You don't want to have someone that is not into building infrastructure and rebuilding California and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I went to the people, gave them that message, and I won.
So when was the moment? Was it the election night? Was it when you went to Sacramento? When you were by yourself, looking in the mirror, saying, is this possible? Did this really happen to me? What was your high moment after you were elected?
I tell you that when you are jumping on that train to get elected, you have no time to think other than I got to win, I got to read the speeches, I got to communicate, I got to do this interview, I got to do this, 24 hours a day. It's just 2 months. I remember that in August they announced it, and then October, 2 months later, was the election. So it was like all-out war. Only when on October 7th, which we just passed, was my 20-year anniversary on October 7th. So only on October 7th, when there was the election, I kind of like went to get dressed, to go to Century Plaza Hotel, where there was the victory party. And I walked by the television set, and I heard the commentator saying, Governor Gray Davis has been recalled, and our new governor will be Schwarzenegger, Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I heard that on the news, I literally had tears coming down my eyes. It was the most powerful thing that I ever felt or heard, that this actually worked. I am going to become the governor of a state that has 40 million people, that is the #1 state in the United States, that is the 5th largest economy in the world. I am going to be the governor. It was wow. It's like it's one thing to chase something, but it's another thing to actually experience it. It reminded me again on this when I stood there on the stage in London and I won Mr. Universe with the age of 20. And I was there, and I saw this vision of where Reg Park won his Mr. Universe title, that I'm standing there and looking around, and they're giving me the trophy. You're Mr. Universe. I just couldn't believe it. So it was the same kind of thing where you just say, wow. And so it was a very emotional moment. And it was also a moment where I recognized the fact, once again, that I could have never done that alone. And that's why I always tell people, you can call me anything you want, but don't call me a self-made man. Because there were 5.8 million people that voted for me to be governor. These people made me governor. So there's 5.8 million people right there. And there's all these people, Joe Weider, that brought me to this country, that was the publisher of the muscle magazines, and there were the training partners that were there, there were the acting coaches, there were the stunt guys that were there that made me shine on the screen and all this. So there's so many millions of people that helped me be where I am today. That's why I also say at the same breath, only in America.
Well, on that same line of thinking, you probably haven't read today's paper, there was an amendment passed to change the Constitution so that now you don't have to be born in America to become president. And there's an election, and you are now President Schwarzenegger. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. It's like having a lot of faith in me. Thank you very much.
And you're only 76, so by comparison, you're a kid.
I'm a young kid, yeah, exactly.
So what, now that you're the president, you know, there are problems all around us. What are some of your ideas onto how to fix our country?
Well, the most important thing, I think, is to bring people together. Because you cannot go and start attacking specific things. You have to first create an atmosphere where you make everyone in Washington feel that they are part of the team. And no one is on the other side. That Democrats are as much loved as Republicans. Right-wingers are as much loved as the left-wingers. No matter how extreme they are. We are all part of the team. Yes, you have your beliefs that are quite contrary to mine, but you're all part of the team. And that we only can win if we all play together. So let's figure this out. So that you kind of no one can achieve a 10 with the negotiations. A 7 maybe, a 8 maybe if you really stretch it. When we say we want to reduce greenhouse gases and pollution by 25%, we didn't go and say to Caterpillar, you cannot build that engine anymore now. It's over. Because how are they going to change an engine from one day to the next? It's impossible. So we have to protect them also and say, you have 10 years to build a new engine. We're not going to implement that law for you for 10 years. But our goal is by the year 2020, we want to reduce our pollution. We want to have 50% renewables and all this kind of stuff. We worked out together. The Republicans were part of the game plan, and the Republicans, and we did it. And then when we had the bill signing, out there in front of on this little island with San Francisco in the background, there were the environmentalists that were sitting next to the car manufacturers. No one was attacking each other. No one was hating each other because we signed a bill that protected the oil companies, the car manufacturers, and also the environment. Everything, we figured out a way to do that.
Right, so what you talk about is very logical and very reasonable, makes a lot of sense, bringing both sides together for common goals, but how come nobody's done it? How come we're the most divided we've ever been probably in history?
Because people don't come from that kind of a background. People come from a background that they're deeply rooted Democrats. And they always look at the other side, their whole career, as the enemy. And Republicans, the same thing. I don't come from the political background. I come like you. I'm just a guy that happened to be interested in doing some public service also, and to jump into the arena and to be able to go and say, I've made enough money, so if I lose now $20 million a movie and do 2 movies a year, if I lose that, that doesn't matter to me anymore. To me, it's more important to serve the country. So that's the mentality. I came from, kind of like a socialist country. When I grew up, Austria was a socialist country. I came from that, so that's what made me more conservative thinking. and to find more conservative solutions. But that I did not ever look at the other side as the enemy. God, I was married to a Democrat for 25 years. Maria, I did not look at them, nor did I look at the Kennedy family or the Shriver family as the enemy. I said to myself, they have great ideas. Maybe not exactly the way I would solve the problem, but there was great ideas to go out and help people. So this is the way I see it. So I think there's just not enough emphasis paid. Biden is trying every so often to do that, to bring Republicans in, but it needs a whole energy. You know, like Kennedy was very good at that. You know, when he came into power, you know, he was able to kind of work with both of them together. And he had Johnson as the vice president, who was a genius when it comes to, you know, the capital and how to run all that, you know. So that's exactly what you need.
President Schwarzenegger, what are you going to do to solve the problem of inflation?
Not create it in the first place.
But now we have it.
I know.
You just
but
took it over.
you know what is the craziest thing? When government always says we're going to solve this problem, or they go and brag and says we just lowered the inflation by 2%. Well, who created it? Who printed all this money? Who gave out money? Who created the debt? The politicians. Now we have $35 trillion debt. They keep printing money and they keep saying we should have a student loan forgiveness. We should have more health care. We should have more that.
So therefore we should
not create the inflation in the first place.
So
we
we
should
have
not
to
create
cut
that mess
expenses.
in the first place. Yeah. We should not start printing more money all the time. And we should not go and live in debt. For 20 years, this country has been living in debt. What do you think this guy does? So then they go and they have more debt and more debt and more debt, printing more and more money. And the dollar gets devalued because of that. And then all of a sudden, things start costing more money. So this is what, then they go and they put who did they punish? Not the politicians, the ordinary folks. They all of a sudden the interest rate is instead of 3%, it's 7% or 8%. So now when you go out and you want to get a house, how expensive is that? I mean, so you have a loan with variable interest rate, and then all of a sudden you pay 1 month, you pay $3,000 a month for the mortgage. Now all of a sudden it's $8,000 a month for the mortgage. You can't do that, so the people get thrown out of their homes. It creates a crisis.
President Schwarzenegger, what are you going to do about the out-of-control crime in America?
I will be for tough law and order and supporting law enforcement.
What about all the DAs that don't even lock people up anymore?
Well,
it's going to end.
I would have a campaign that will be against that, because you cannot, through kindness, get rid of crime. It doesn't happen. You have to have severe punishment, and you have to really let the people know that if they commit those crimes, they're going to go to jail. But all of these liberal kind of attitudes that are going on in those cities now has backfired in a big way, because we see the crime going up, we see the killings going up, the homicides. I mean, it is chaos in some of those big cities. If you look to Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Baltimore, you go to Washington, D.C., I mean, the capital of the United States is under siege. I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous of what's going on in these places, and they don't have enough law enforcement, and then there's some people running around even talking about defunding the police. Yes, we all recognize the police makes mistakes. Yes, we all have to recognize that there is brutality sometimes in the police force. We have to recognize that, and we have to weed that out, and we have to go after those kind of problems. But you cannot go and defund the police, and you cannot go all of a sudden and make the police the enemy of everything. No, the criminals always will be the enemy. And the law enforcement is always the ones that are straightening things out and keep things within the law and order.
The southern border, the border wall, immigration. What are you going to do about that? Is it a problem?
It's a major problem. And this problem, remember, I was governor and sent our troops to the border. We helped the Bush administration, we sent 1,000 troops to the border and to help them patrol the border. I think it has been a disaster since the late 80s. And I don't know why the politicians, again, Democrats and Republicans, can get together and solve this problem.
We now have many threats outside the United States. And when the problem with Ukraine started, you produced a video where you wanted to talk to the people of Russia and the military of Russia, as it was written, which was very compelling and very emotional. Why did you do it, and did it help?
You know, sometimes you do something because it is in your blood that you have to speak out. And so I felt very strongly when the war began that it was an unjust and unprovoked war that was totally unnecessary. That what the issues were can be negotiated. And it don't have to be done by killing innocent people. And I'm talking about innocent people, even soldiers. This is totally unnecessary to kill that many soldiers in Ukraine and to have that many hundreds of thousands of soldiers, of Russian soldiers killed unnecessarily, just because the leaders cannot get together and sit down and kind of work this out. Because all we are talking about here is the issue about how do we make sure that Russia is protected and not attacked? And there is a way of doing it. I'm no expert, I'm not Henry Kissinger, but I can tell you one thing, that Russia has a right of being concerned when you talk about Ukraine becoming NATO. So there's a dilemma, because they don't want to have the rockets and everything aiming at them from the south in order to. So what I'm basically saying is, this is an issue about security, their own security. How do we solve that is really the question.
All right, so you're the president now.
Yeah.
You go to Moscow, you sit down with Putin. What do you say to him?
Well, this is a very hypothetical question, and I don't know exactly enough about Putin and his strategy and what his complaints are and what his problems are. But I guarantee you that somewhere, somehow, eventually, this has to be resolved, because we cannot go on from one year to the next and just keep killing people. We are better than that.
Our government has given Ukraine the $75 billion, increasing. There are a number of people who say we should be taking care of our problems at home. We can't afford to support all these efforts. What do you say to those people?
I think they have a very, very good argument. But you have to also think about the world. And you have to think about America staying strong in the world. Because there's those people in America that say, okay, if we let that go, then the next thing will be Poland, and the next thing will be another country, and Russia will expand. And then at the same time, there's people that rightfully say, we need to go and spend the money here. But if you think about $35 trillion debt, so I think we have to go and figure out a way of spending less and investing more in general. I don't think that this has anything to do with the Ukraine. I think that we have a spending problem in this country, not because of Ukraine. If Ukraine would not exist right now, we would have the same $35 trillion in debt. So that is really the issue here. So I understand that people always talk about, let's spend money at home and not abroad and all this. I totally get that. But you have to also think about the bigger vision and say, okay, we got to go and make sure that we create stability all over the world and put out those fires and help our friends when they're in need. So that's the same with Israel now. It's the same thing. I think America has to go and support Israel 100% in this unprovoked attacks that just happened. And I think we have to go and stand by them and not think just about, okay, but that means there's less money than for education or less money for healthcare or less money for this or that. Because so far we have spent a lot of money on all of those issues and we have a huge debt. So it's not because of our friends that we're supporting.
How do we control this? How do we get out of this? How do we make our world a safer place, a better place to live?
I'm not solving the problem.
But it becomes our problem.
I know, but this is why you have to elect the right people. That's the important thing. So you just have to see who has what philosophy, and then you elect the right people, rather than having sometimes those bums get elected that don't deserve to be in office in Washington, because the fact of the matter is, you can go and pick subject by subject right now, but the fact of the matter is that Congress has an approval rating of 19%. And you know that any worker for you here at Cigar Aficionado has a 19% approval rating, they will be out. I can tell you that in my office, or even when I was governor, they were out when someone had that kind of a low approval rating and they didn't perform. I mean, the Capitol costs us every year around, $3 billion. And what do we get for this $3 billion that we're spending on the Capitol and all the senators and congressmen and all this kind of stuff, and the overhead that is, it's crazy. We don't get anything. I mean, this is poor performance.
And the incredible pork.
Exactly.
Well, so it's October 8th, 9th, I don't even know the date. Do you see, you're no longer President Schwarzenegger for the next question. Is there anyone out there on the Democratic side or the Republican side that you feel has the qualifications and can lead us into the future?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that are qualified, but the question is, do they have the energy to do it? Do they have the wisdom to do it? I mean, remember, qualified is one thing, but do they have the will to do it? I mean, there's people in politics that know, for instance, that we have a problem with pollution, but they rather go and satisfy the oil companies and not make a move because they get paid by the oil companies. And so, with that mentality in mind, and with that what is going on right now, it takes more than that. I think that we need to find the younger generation that can go and lead this country forward. And of course now it's maybe...
Is there anyone in particular that
No. I don't endorse anybody. I'm not in that business, an endorsement business. I have my own. Even today, I am still waiting to see if someone is emerging that is an alternative.
Okay, so China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. Do you see one as a more significant problem for America than the others? Where do you see the future possibilities of creating a peaceful atmosphere in the future?
Well, it's all about coexisting. I'm a big believer in live and let's live. It's not just my way or the highway. So I think that we have to just figure out, everyone has challenges. Russia has challenges economically. China has challenges economically. The United States has challenges economically. And so does the European Union. So the question is, how do we work together and we all can benefit and we all can make money and we all can go and work together on those issues? It's really the question. And it's an art to do that. It's not easy. It's very, very difficult. But one thing we should know is that we got to kind of understand each other's problems. We got to understand China's problems. China got to understand our problems. To stay away from each other and not to talk and not to have ambassadors there and not to hang out together is the worst thing that you can do, because nothing is accomplished this way. We got to be together and we got to have relationships. That's the important thing. My father-in-law, Sergeant Schreiber, he used to go for Arm& Hammer to Russia when it was communism, Soviet Union. And he made deals for oil drilling and oil deals. And I said to him, I said, how do you go there to the communists as an American and make them feel comfortable that you're going to bring a good deal and not take advantage of them or something like this? He says, it's all about finding a common interest. He says, I met the guy that was in charge of oil in Russia. And when I had dinner with him, he never talked business. He says, I found out that he has children and he loves fishing, cigars. So we started talking about those things. I invited him to come to Johannesburg fishing with me. He immediately invited me to go fishing with him. And he says, we created a relationship before we ever did business. He says, because we found something that he is a father and he's concerned, so concerned about his children when he talked to me. And I am so concerned about my kids. And we're concerned about this and that, about this. All of a sudden, they start talking about the safety of the world, about this and that. And one thing led to the next, and we worked out great, great deals. And he says, so it was that you have to find common things that you have in common. And then you realize that you're human beings like everyone else. It doesn't matter if you're from China, from Russia, if you're from America. So you have to start working on a human level rather than just seeing each other as the enemy. And so to me, this is a very important lesson. That's the lesson that I walked away with from Sergeant. That's why I always call him a great mentor, Sergeant Schreiber, because he taught me some of those very important issues. So when I went to Sacramento, I did exactly the same. I started hanging out with the Democrats. I started having them over at the house. I started inviting them on flights with me on a plane to go to Washington to visit the legislators and talk to them together and come up and map out a strategy for California so we all can fight for the same thing. So, and it all worked. It all worked.
We're talking about leadership and world leadership. And earlier I showed you the humidors of three leaders, very much different in certain ways. I'd like you to spend a few minutes, whatever comes into your mind, first on JFK.
He was a great leader. JFK was a great leader, and he was a great communicator. And he was in the center. He was not some left-wing nut. He knew that you have to cater to business. He knew that you have to cater to the military. He knew that you have to cater to the people that take care of the social programs. He knew how to kind of bring it all together. So he was, I think, terrific. Everything that I read about him, I know there's certain people that didn't like him and all that stuff, that's perfectly fine. But I think he was a fantastic president. And I put, him in the same category as Teddy Roosevelt, Lincoln, Washington, Reagan. All of those guys are in the same kind of a group, I think.
Sir Winston Churchill.
Great, great leader. I mean, I have to laugh about it because my mother, the day he died, which was when I was in Austria, my mother says, thank God, that bastard, because they won the war. So, there was the Austrians were still hating him for that. Not all of them, but I remember my mother was like very happy about it when he passed away. And and I, of course, became a big fan of his. So that's the funny thing about the next generation. My father was in the Nazi war. He fought in the Nazi war, and I'm going to Auschwitz and try to put the spotlight on it and say this should never ever happen again. So that's where I'm coming from. And so I think that these were great leaders, and I hope that eventually we get those kind of leaders back, that we have another kind of generation of leaders like that can really bring the world together. Yes, they had their problems. Remember, Reagan, he had a huge challenge taking over after the Carter administration to bring inflation under control, talking about a master of making inflation come under control, and to bring employment back, and to make the businesses boom again, and to bring the economy back, and all this. It's an unbelievable kind of a sensitive balancing act to do that. But, he did it. And so I'm just looking for another generation of great leaders like that.
And the third humidor?
But in any case, the third humidor is Milton Berle.
No.
Oh, no.
Fidel Castro.
Oh, Fidel Castro, yeah.
Milton Berle was not a great leader.
No,
he was
Milton
a great
Berle.
comedian, but he was not a great leader.
Well, he helped me with comedy. No, but I know, I'm just saying because you showed me 3 humidors, great humidors. One of them was Milton Berle's humidor that you got. You're the only one that has that from President Kennedy's collection that Milton Berle gave him. And I think the whole cigar world knows that you have that exclusive and that thing. But yes, you have others. You have one that you showed me also, Fidel Castro. I mean, Fidel Castro was, a dictator. And he comes from a country that is known for besides Fidel Castro, for its cigars. And so I think you have been to Cuba probably more often than I have. I've been there only twice. And one time I was there when my wife was there, interviewing Fidel Castro for her show, for a morning news show. And another time I went there with her just to visit. And both times I had the opportunity to go to the cigar factories and to tour the cigar factories and to really watch them roll the cigars and read the news every morning to the people that roll the cigars. There was someone up there on the stage reading the news and all that stuff. And so it was great to see all of that and to see the great humidors that they're building and to see the great cigars that they're rolling there. And you learn a lot about the cigar business and about, what makes a great cigar and the importance of the right soil and the right weather and the right humidity and the way you treat the leaves when they get cut and how you hang them up and dry them and blah, 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 and how you roll them and how you choose the leaves from a good leaf to a bad leaf, one without veins in it, the veins in it, the thin, the silk kind of wrappers around it and all that stuff.
You're having dinner with Fidel Castro, smoking a cigar. You're this close from him. What do you want to say to him?
Now you're the dictator. Create a democracy. This will be a huge legend. He will be a legend. It will be a legacy that no one can ever ignore. Because I understand that how he wanted to overthrow the country because it was not fair and it didn't really help the poor. It was all for the rich and all that stuff. I understand all that. But then at a certain point you have to go and say, that's maybe not the direction that we want to stay in. This was good for right now, to get to that position, but I think that we should create a democracy.
You've been to Cuba, you've met the Cuban people. What are your feelings about the embargo?
I hate embargoes. I always feel that the world should be the trading place
So why is it 60 years later we still have an embargo with our neighbor?
I can understand that the people that are in politics and that get voted in by a large majority of Cubans, that this is a very sensitive issue with the Cuban people. I mean, you have to understand that they were chased out of their homes. And the Cuban people have been tortured and they've been killed. And their homes have been taken away from them. So they escaped and came over here. Their children are growing up over here. They will always look at that regime as an evil regime. And therefore, let's not go and take anything from them. Let's never bring the cigars in. So I totally understand that. I'm just talking about from a cigar smoking point of view and from an economic point of view. I always think that the world is the trading place and we should not kind of put embargoes on things. If we have a problem with Iranians, it doesn't mean that we should have an embargo on Persian rugs or something like that. So it doesn't make sense to me. But I mean, I understand that the politicians have to do that a lot of times in order to get the votes and in order to get voted in again and all of that stuff. And I have a lot of Cuban friends that a lot of times when I go down to Miami, I don't light up a Cuban cigar. I light up one from the Dominican Republic because I don't want to throw it in their face and say, look, I don't care the way you feel, because I do care the way they feel. And I feel really sad that this kind of a history has happened to them. And, so we have to be understanding and meet somewhere in the middle. But I mean, to me, I like Cuban cigars, and I have been smoking them my whole life. I ride along with Dominican cigars and all kinds of other Nicaraguan cigars and all that stuff. So, I see it in a different way. I mean, I'm not an elected official, so I don't have to really represent them.
Well, speaking about cigars, Winston Churchill always had a cigar, and now you're having dinner with him, and you're having a cigar. What do you want to say to him?
Winston, I love you, and I tell you why. Not only because you're a great politician, and you were a great leader during the Second World War, and a great negotiator, but you have good taste with cigars, and you're a great painter. I love your art. I love your art. And the key thing is that everyone should learn from your situation is that everyone told you no. Forget it. It can't be done. You're wrong. And you proved them that they were wrong. He did it. He fought Hitler. He went all out. He put everything on the line, and then later on as a politician, he was like Eisenhower, who was, the big warrior, but then he went into politics and then he became prime minister. So, I mean, he was a jewel.
All right. You're now having dinner with JFK. What do you want to say to JFK?
You have a lot of talent. You're an extraordinary speaker. You've led this country in a fantastic way, and we miss you.
Wow. Those are very interesting responses. For the readers of Cigar Aficionado, when did you first become introduced to cigars, and what experience do you remember in the beginning as to why you gravitated toward it?
I think that I was introduced to bogus, cheap cigars back in Munich in the beer hall when they handed out those Virginias, with the straw coming out on one side and the cigar. This is what they handed out there in the beer hall. And then we every so often smoked. We was 19 years old, and we kind of felt like grown-ups, even though I was a kid still. And then later on, when I did Conan the Barbarian, John Milius, the director of the Conan movie, was a big cigar smoker. He loved the Monte Cristo #2. As a matter of fact, part of his deal to make a movie, to direct a movie, was to get so and so many boxes a week directly sent from Switzerland. And so he shared them with me on a set. But simultaneously, as that was going on, I was dating Maria. And Maria, when she took me home, her father, after dinner, would take me downstairs. And he said to me, he says, come with me. And he always had a little cough in between, like, come on out, let's go downstairs. Let's go downstairs, I'll show you something. And he would go downstairs and he would pull out the cigars. And he would give me a cigar and he says, I don't know if you're man enough to smoke that. So of course, and I'm dating his daughter, of course I wanted to show if the bodybuilding and the muscles didn't make him convinced to be that I'm a man enough, I don't know. And maybe I have to smoke a cigar. So anyway, so we lit one up. This was back in '78, before I started, smoking with Milius. And I smoked one. And then a month later, we would get together again. And now I would go out and get a cigar because I have to kind of like pay him back for the cigar.
He told you not to inhale it, though, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no. I don't think that he thought that I would inhale it. No, because I was not a cigarette smoker.
Yeah.
I never was a cigarette smoker. The thing was that I always loved to draw the cigar, and so I was getting together with Sergeant again, and so I went out and found some joint that had Cuban cigars, because a Cuban ambassador came by once every so often and brought cigars and sold it to them. And so that's how I got my Cuban cigars for him also. And so every so often, once a month, we would get together and smoke a cigar. And then on a Conan set, in 1980, 1981, we would then smoke once a day a cigar that Milius would then share with me after lunch. And it was kind of a great celebration.
It was always a money number, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, so it was kind of something I got into, and then I kept smoking the cigars after that, and I always had a good time. And the funny thing about it was that I always understood people that were complaining about it. Because I said to myself, I understand that no one wants to inhale my crap that I'm blowing out. And so if someone sits next to me at the table, so when I was governor, I would sign a lot of the cigar legislation against, smoking in public, like sitting outside on a patio or inside a restaurant or a public place or anything like that, because I totally understood that we shouldn't be smoking. I found it absurd when I was sitting in an airplane, and on one side of the plane, on Lufthansa, it said smoking. On the other side of the plane, which was right 6 feet away, it said no smoking. And someone said, how absurd is that? I smelled in the no smoking section the smoke from the smoking section. So it was stupid. So I said to myself, we have to be considerate, and we have to kind of find places where people can smoke, where there's specific room for smoking, or where there's a patio that is for smokers and all that kind of stuff.
Ergo, a tent.
Yeah, so I'm so happy you mentioned the tent, because the legislators tried to be very cute. And they came to me and they said, well, you're signing this legislation about not smoking in public. We would like to send you a bill that says that you cannot smoke in the Capitol. So I said, well, I'm not smoking in the Capitol. I said, the law says that you have to be 20 feet away from the building. I say, I have an atrium where my office is, and we have measured 20 feet away from the building, from each side of this atrium. I said, we're building a tent. We built a tent that is big enough so we can have inside meetings and everything like that, and we're gonna smoke our cigars in there. And they sent me a bill to forbid smoking in a smoking tent. And so, of course, I didn't sign it. I vetoed it, put a nice veto message on it, and let them know that this is unacceptable for me. I said, because and no one is there that doesn't want to smoke. As a matter of fact, Democrats and other legislators came down and asked me and begged me, can I come down and smoke? And that's how I got most of my deals done. They came down to smoke, and then, like I said, we have found something in common, which is smoking. And we smoked our stogies, took our jackets off, took our ties off. We were sitting there and said, what are you working on? I said, well, I'm trying to get this bill done, and I don't know if you ever would sign it or not, blah, blah. I said, well, let me look at it. And I said, maybe I can make some corrections on the bill so that it is possible for me to sign. And so we started working together, and I was able to sign more of the legislation because they were not stubborn about how they wrote the legislation. So this is what we did. And we got a lot of things done because of the smoking tent. And the smoking tent is now in storage. And one of these days, because we have every year, I do what you do fundraisers for various different causes. I have had just on Saturday, we had a fundraiser where we raised $7 million for after-school programs. And I auction off stuff that I have. For instance, I auctioned off the Terminator bike. It was the motorcycle, police motorcycle in Terminator 3. I auctioned off the Terminator jackets and this and that, and all kinds of movie memorabilia and paintings that I own and sculptures that I own. And one of these days I will auction off that cigar tent. So you can bid on it and create your own cigar tent.
I'm still paying for the humidor.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure you do.
So, what is your how occasional do you smoke today?
An average, one cigar a day.
And where do you smoke it?
I have a patio at my house where I created after we bought the house. I created by the swimming pool and by the jacuzzi a huge fireplace, a monster fireplace. So that the flames are this high and big logs. And we put a roof over it. And there I sit at night, or during the day sometimes, but mostly at night. And I smoke my cigar. I watch TV. There's the TV on above the fireplace. And
how do you decide which cigar you're going to smoke each night?
You know something? I don't decide. I get, on my birthday and Christmas time, I get a lot of times cigars as gifts because people don't know what to give me. They say this guy has everything, but I think cigars would be the right way to go. So they give me an ashtray, or they give me a lighter, or they give me cigars.
What do you like?
It's like, for instance, one of the cigars that I've enjoyed a lot was Fuentes cigars. That he sends me those very skinny ones. Lancero, I think, what they do, right? Lancero, yeah, Lancero. So it's that shape of cigar. It's a thin cigar, great smoke, easy to draw and stuff like that. And then he sends me others. Then Cuban cigars, people give me as gifts. I smoke those. So it's kind of sometimes they're Monte Cristo, sometimes they're, some other make. It doesn't make any difference.
Do you prefer a fat cigar, a thin cigar, a long cigar, a short cigar?
I would say a smaller cigar and a thinner cigar I prefer.
So almost 30 years ago, you bought a set of golf clubs from JFK. You paid a lot of money. Have you ever once used them?
Yes. I'm so happy that you didn't say, did you use them twice? Because I didn't. I had to go and take some pictures with it, and had to go and use it. It is fantastic.
You've lived an incredible life, traveled the world, met various people and so forth. What's left? Is there anything left on your bucket list?
Well, I am as hungry today as I was 50 years ago. And in my book, Be Useful, I talk about this mountain climber, Hillary. that was the first person to climb Mount Everest. And he climbed up Mount Everest, and after that, the press was waiting for him and asked him when he came back down, what was your feeling when you were up there? What did you think about? And he looked around and said, I'm on the highest mountain in the world. And he said, the only thing that came to my mind was, I saw another peak, which I never saw before. But I saw this other peak, and I said to myself, I wonder what it's like to climb that peak. And he says, that's what I was thinking and mapping out when I came back, how to climb that peak. And so it's not about, when you achieve something, it's not about just sitting on your laurels and say, I made it. Bullshit. What did you make? Nothing. I mean, yeah, you accomplished something just now, but I mean, what's the next thing? So I believe in the philosophy of staying hungry. So every time I climb a peak, I see many other peaks to climb. And so one of the things that you don't know, it takes you in different directions that you never ever have dreamt of. New dreams come up, new visions come up. And to me now, I've found out, for instance, that my talent is, I did not know, is to be a motivator. Someone that makes the impossible possible for people. You know, I noticed it when people trained with me that I sucked them in and they became all champions and all that stuff. Yes, but I mean, I did not know to the extent that now all of a sudden, you know, they made me write this book, be useful. I mean, I never ever thought that I'm going to write a book about motivation and about self-help and all those kind of things at all. But they said, Arnold, your speeches are so effective when you go around the world and you motivate people. Your column, your newsletter that you write every day, this is the positive corner of the internet and all of this stuff. It is so good. It helps me so much. I get so many letters saying, thank you so much for motivating me to get out of bed in the morning. Thank you so much for creating a vision for me. You know, now I'm motivated. So this is my new thing now, is like kind of like help other people. To use all of my talents, my bodybuilding talent, my show business, what I learned in show business, what I learned in the governorship and in public policy and all of this stuff. Bring all of this together and help other people. That is what my thing is, helping them helping the world with environmental issues, with healthcare issues, with education issues, with motivational issues and all of this stuff. So I kind of become kind of like the cheerleader and the motivator. So this is kind of my new thing that I'm into, to help as many people as possible.
Last question.
You've been saying that.
No. This is the final question, and think about it before you answer it.
Do I have to?
Yeah, it's 100 years from now, and there's an encyclopedia listing all the people that have lived. What do you want it to say after Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I leave this up to the people. I leave this up to the people what it says. Because I tell you why. It depends really, there's so many directions you can go with that. Because there's people in bodybuilding that would say, oh, he was the bodybuilding legend and he motivated so many millions of people to work out and all this stuff. There's other people that say, oh, he was so great with the environment, he did passed laws and motivated everyone to go and reduce greenhouse gases and pollution, get off fossil fuels. There's other people that would say, you know, he appointed, you know, the most judges, minority judges in California, or whatever it is. There's so many different directions that you can go. I don't really care, as long as they know that I always wanted to make the world a better place, you know, to kind of hand over this world in a better shape than when I inherited it, when I got it, when I grew up. So that is what it is all about. So this is my effort. Not that I'm maybe successful in it, but this is my effort, is to make this a better place, to use all my knowledge, everything that I've learned in the past, and to make people aware of it, that they have the responsibility to not just think about themselves, but to think about others. Because we all have to help each other. When I think of the amount of people that helped me to get where I am today, it is important for me to acknowledge that and to let them know. That's why in my book I list all of the people that were very helpful in my life, so that they know that when you have made it, go and use your power of influence and your knowledge and help others, because there's so many people that need help. That's it.
You were great.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
No publication covers the good life and the world of cigars as completely as Cigar Aficionado. Every issue of Cigar Aficionado magazine takes the readers on a voyage featuring exclusive interviews and profiles of some of the world's most intriguing personalities, plus stories on golf, reviews of luxury products and destinations, insights to the country of Cuba, and profiles of cigar industry superstars. Most important, Cigar Aficionado rates hundreds of handmade cigars each year with an incredible database of more than 23,000 cigar reviews. Cigar Aficionado's editors guide you to the highest quality cigars as well as the best values inside cigar shop humidors. There's a reason Cigar Aficionado is the world's most widely read cigar magazine. Take your cigar enjoyment to greater heights and subscribe today at cigaraficionado.com.